We now continue with Smurf.
I made a thread at the start of the year about some weird experiences I had as a Boy Scout. I will just post what I had in there. I have lived my entire life in Oklahoma, and it is probably just about as rural as most of you think it is. Outside of the Oklahoma City, Moore/Norman area, and Tulsa, Oklahoma is mostly small towns, casinos, and lots, and I mean lots, of woods and open plains, backcountry galore. A perfect place to teach young scouts the basics without throwing them right into the heart of the fray. It is usually pretty quiet everywhere you go, and people are generally friendly. We're the definition of flyover state. If there is one thing people probably immediately relate to Oklahoma, it's Native Americans, native land, reservations, folklore, etc. While this stuff is not prevalent in the bigger cities, it becomes incredibly prominent as you enter the more rural parts of the state. For those curious, I'm not sure how much land is still legally considered native, but it's probably more than any other state. This particular incident occurred in the summer of 2011 at a scout camp not too far away from the Oklahoma-Texas border. This was the last trip I ever made out there, and I do not really regret it. Camp lasts Sunday through Saturday, 1 week. I arrive on Sunday. I work on merit badges Monday to Thursday. I chill on Friday, and I leave on Saturday. The leaders of my troop were comprised almost entirely of one family, whom I will call the Perkins. There was the great-grandfather, C, the grandfather, D, and the grandson, Buck. C was about 75 when I joined, and fit the crockety old man stereotype like a glove. He was abrasive, impatient, and quick to lose his temper, while at the same time, happy to help any boy that did not ask stupid questions. C was also a war veteran, not sure which war though. D was a lot like his father, except, I don't know, cryptic? I guess what I am trying to say is that you could tell that D had seen some shit. He was a little out there, very my way or the highway, do what I say if you don't want to die kind of guy. Probably 60-ish, but built like a bear. The man was massive and intimidating, and he knew it. To this day, I think D knows a hell of a lot more about this particular incident than he will ever tell, but I never had the courage to ask him about anything. Buck, the grandson, was about a year older than me. Buck was a bit thick in the head, but he was tough and built just like his granddad. He was also as loyal as a golden retriever, and the word fear was not exactly in his rather limited vocabulary, but I digress. Another key player at the time was my best friend, Dylan. Dylan was stubborn, headstrong, and generally looking for trouble. He and I started scouts together at 6, and we're the only two that had stuck together since that time. We were usually inseparable, which probably saved our lives that night. Now, I was about the opposite of Dylan. I was meek, easily scared, and suffered from constitutional delay, which means that I looked like I was 10 even though I was 15. Pick related. I am the scrawny kid in blue. This was taken earlier in 2011, around April. So anyway, we had been going to this scout camp for as long as I had been involved with the troop. Every summer, usually in June or July, we would make our week trip down there and head home. Dylan and I knew what the camp was supposed to feel like and sound like, as did C and D, who had been going there for 20-odd years. This year, we immediately knew that something was off. Have you ever walked into a place and just felt like bad vibes? Like bad energy just kind of taking up residence somewhere? It was kind of like that the moment we drove through the gates. The younger boys seemed pretty oblivious, but I know Dylan felt like I did. And D. Man, I don't think I've ever seen D as tense as he was that whole week. He was normally pretty chill, if a little strict, but he was on the edge the moment we arrived on the grounds until we left on Saturday. I suppose the best way to do this from here is to give a chronological account of events that happen day to day over the week. That is the only way I can think to do this without losing myself and you guys. The first thing you do when arriving at camp is drive to the registration office to confirm campsites, number of boys, leaders, etc. We did this, but D was gone for a very long time. When he came back, he was being escorted by the camp ranger. As D was hopping back into the sedan, I remember hearing the ranger say something like, "Just let me know ASAP if anything happens." Well, this isn't an odd thing to say or hear. I now wonder if it held a deeper meaning. Our campsite was toward the northeast end of the camp, down in a tiny valley surrounded by rock outcroppings on the north and south. The northern outcroppings were split from east to west and created what we called the storm shelter. It was basically this little crevice that we would hide in if severe weather ever sprang up. I was assigned to check up on it, make sure it was clear of debris and shit before the week started. So I walk around the shelter, and I am slammed with this awful smell. I knew it was something dead, and it smelled big. Once I got down into the crevice, I saw that it was not something big, but a bunch of smaller animals in piles. Birds, foxes, raccoons, parts of a deer. There was a ton of dead, mutilated bodies back there. I nearly puked, it smelled so bad. The heat did not help with the smell either. Alarm bells weren't really ringing yet, but I was definitely weirded out. I told D, and he said he would have a look and clean up, and that I should just forget. Pick related, similar looking to the storm shelter. Monday. Our campsite was basically set up as one giant semicircle. Our tents formed a ring that almost enclosed pavilions in the center. Very little time was actually spent at our campsite, as we were all working on merit badges at the mess hall, cantina, shooting range, lake, etc. There was no reason for any boy to be in camp, and it was rare to find one who wanted to stay in camp. Dylan and I stuck together most evenings, and Monday night we decided to shoot, or rather, Dylan decided to shoot. I was a terrible shot and did not want to pay for ammo I would end up wasting. We were about halfway to the range when he realized he had forgotten his money, so we turned around and headed back towards camp. When we got there, it was empty as expected, but we noticed one of the tent flaps had been left open. Big problem there. D was constantly on us to keep our flaps shut so as to keep any curious woodland animals / insects out of our tents. So I walked over there to zip it up when I realized that it was still zipped and that the door had simply been ripped open. The tent had been ransacked. Sleeping bags were shredded, trunks flipped over, and the supplies gone through. It was an utter wreck. I called Dylan over, and our conversation went something like this. Shit man, holy hell, who would do this? I don't know man, it was not one of our boys. D would make sure he'd never see the light of day again. Should we tell him? Do you want to have your head bit off? Let him find it for himself. This was a stupid decision in hindsight. We should have found D and alerted him immediately, but since we did not want to suffer his wrath, we didn't. When we got back to the camp that night, everyone was on edge. All the younger boys were freaking out, whispering about Bigfoot, etc. D told us that the rest of the week, we all had to be back in camp before sundown, which I thought was kind of pointless. The tent had been ransacked during the day, but whatever. Pick related, similar to campsite. Tuesday. Tuesday was actually pretty uneventful. All I recall is that some boys a couple of campsites over from ours got spooked because they heard noises in and around their campsite that night. If I'm being honest, that could have been anything. There is an awful lot of animal life out there in rural Oklahoma, and it's not unusual for new or amateur scouts to accidentally lure raccoons, foxes, or occasionally bigger things into camp by leaving food out at night. But I still have to wonder if it was related to my other experiences that week. Wednesday was different. The bad vibes seemed to be getting stronger, or maybe that was just me getting more wound up. I don't know. What I do know is that the mess hall had been broken into the night before and utterly wrecked. Food had been half-eaten, supplies were strewn everywhere. At least, that is what I heard. We were not allowed up to the mess hall until dinner that night, by which time the camp had cleaned everything up. Of course, everyone was on edge now. There were mutterings and whisperings, rumors circulating that basically would have been an ex-wet dream. Did you hear? They found some homeless guy camping out on the other side of the lake. Tom found some really weird footprints outside his tent last night. Did you see them? I heard some weird mating call last night. Did anyone else? I could have sworn I was being stalked while walking back to the camp last night. Anyone else feel the same way? Out of all of these rumors, there was only one that stuck out to me after the week was over, and the only reason it did is because it reminded me of my experience on Sunday. I found a dead raccoon outside my tent last night. It was like mutilated and shit. Which one of you guys thought that it would be funny? I guess outside of the mess hall business, Wednesday was pretty uneventful too. Just really tense. Thursday. Holy shit, man, Thursday. Thursday night, the camp would always sort of hold this party thing out by the main gate to sort of celebrate the hard work everyone had put in over the week. There would be a bonfire, a chuck wagon, basically the canteen on wheels, stories and songs, lots of Boy Scout stuff, you know? Anyways, D was super against letting anyone in the troop go. He wanted to keep every boy in the camp that night, but after listening to 12 and 13-year-olds whine and cry for 30 minutes, he kind of begrudgingly changed his mind and allowed them to go as long as they were escorted by the older boys. So Buck, Dylan, and I were pretty much responsible for corralling 50 middle schoolers. D said he had a meeting to go to, which I knew was a lie. Scoutmaster meetings were always held in the mornings, never at night, but what the hell. So the three of us start walking them down there, when I realize that we've left the flashlights back at camp, and we only have about 5 minutes of light left. I tell Dylan and Buck to go on ahead of me, but both insist on coming. In the end, Buck escorted the kids to the bonfire, while Dylan and I went back to the camp. That was a mistake for multiple reasons. We had only been gone about 10 minutes, which means it was almost dark once we got back, but our camp was totaled. Our pavilions had been torn down, tents and their contents were strewn about everywhere. Food was out and scattered. It was a complete mess. Alarm bells were basically screaming, code red, get the hell out of there right now. But Dylan was already into the camp before I could stop him. That is when the smell hit us. The smell of dead, decaying stuff. But this time it was mixed with something else. Kind of like spoiled milk. I am not entirely sure how to describe it. And it's not that burnt copper and blood scent that X says is related to the goatman. I know what that smells like. This was something else. Dylan and I both agreed that we needed to find D ASAP. Fate was on our side that night, because not a second later he rushed into camp in full commando mode. I am talking giant knife on his hip, brandishing a pistol. Sorry, I don't know anything about guns, and the biggest flashlight I have ever seen. Dylan and I immediately start blubbering to D about what was going on, begging for answers and almost crying. That is when I noticed his face for the first time. He had a gash down the right side of his forehead that was bleeding pretty profusely, and a massive bruise beginning to envelop the left side of his face. It looked like he had picked a fight with a titanium beam and lost. Let me just remind you that D is about 6'7" and around 260 pounds of pure muscle. Whatever bested him had to be strong. D beckoned us over to him, and the conversation was something like this. Where the hell are the kids? The bonfire, sir. What the fuck are you two doing back here? We forgot the flashlight, sir. Alright. Here is what is gonna happen. Dylan, I'm gonna give you this knife, okay? Anon, you go get those flashlights you were talking about and point them towards the storm shelter. I am going over there. If anything but me comes out, you two run like hell. Do you understand? We nodded and off he went. He rounded the corner into the shelter, and that's about when we heard the noise. Have you ever heard someone trying to talk while choking on their own blood or something like that? That sort of gurgling, gasping noise. That is what it sounded like, mixed with a sort of low growling. Dylan and I stood there frozen for what felt like hours, but was probably more like 5 minutes, when that noise abruptly ceased, and D returned as pale as a sheet, but in one piece. So D escorted us there, and refused to answer any of our questions or give us any sort of closure as to what had just happened. All he said was, I don't think we will have to worry about anything for the rest of the week. So we went to the bonfire, but Dylan and I kept to ourselves and tried to figure out what the hell was going on. When we got back to camp, we did our best to repair as much as we could in the dark. Dylan and I did not sleep at all that night. We were wide awake. At what must have been about midnight, I heard a few noises outside and saw a flashlight beam waving around before finally coming to still position, pointed towards the storm shelter. I poked my head outside of my tent and observed D sitting in a chair, flashlight pointed at the storm shelter, watching and waiting. I watched D all night long, and Friday I finally got some answers. Now, by Friday, I mean about 6:30 that morning. Around then, C came out of his tent and proceeded to have a not exactly quiet conversation with D. Now, bear with me, as I am reconstructing this from memory, so some bits might not be entirely accurate. Anything new? No, I have been out here all night. Nothing since I saw it earlier. I still think you are wrong. They never come this far south, especially this time of year. Must have been something else. I know what I saw, Dad. I am telling you, they are getting bolder. Or more desperate. Or more desperate. Well, I am heading to the mess hall. I need my coffee. Want anything? And they proceeded to talk about breakfast for a while, and C eventually left. I figured if I wanted any sort of closure as to last night, now would be my only chance to talk to D alone. So I approached D, but before I could say anything, he turns around and gave me a look that could have curdled new milk. I stopped in my tracks and he says, "Come, sit." So I sat next to him, and this is all I got out of him. "You were pretty brave last night, kid. Incredibly stupid, but brave." "What did you say?" "Nothing, sir." He was quiet for a good 5 minutes, and I finally mustered up the courage to ask him what the hell was going on. "Sir, yes. Pardon me, sir, but what was it? What is going on?" "How old are you, Anon?" 15, sir." "Anon, the world is a far darker place than you realize right now. You are too young. Let me give you a piece of advice that you need to keep in your head during times like this. Do not ask questions you do not want to know the answer to, or that you already know the answer to." "Do I know the answer to this question, sir?" "Do you?" "It wasn't natural, was it, sir?" "Depends on your definition of natural, Anon. To me, the thing that's terrorized us all week is as natural as any other creature in these woods and on this earth. Simply a darker side of nature. One that usually stays away from heavily trafficked areas like this. They do not like people in large groups." "Then what's it doing here, sir?" "Honestly, Anon, I do not know. I think it got confused. Lost, even." "Is it gone, sir?" "For now, yes. I don't think it will come back while we are here." Dylan woke up about then, as did the rest of our camp, so our conversation was cut short. The rest of Friday was pretty uneventful. Dylan, Buck, and I palled around camp for a while, talking about what we thought it was, or rather, Buck and I did. Dylan did not really talk about it, and acted increasingly irritated as the day went on. Friday night all was well. I slept heavily. Had bad dreams, but I slept. Saturday, we were up about 6:30 that morning to tear down camp. I was ready to go, and even though D was reassuring Friday morning, I could tell he was eager to leave too. He was tense, and would often stop to look towards the storm shelter. About 11:30, D asked me to check the shelter area and clean it up with him, even though no one had actually used it all that week. We got back there, and it was completely different than what I'd seen Sunday. It had been cleaned, spotlessly so, and something similar to pick related had been marked on each side of the canyon walls. I assume it's native, but I do not know what it means, and have never particularly cared to find out. We left about noon, and I have never gone back. So, that's my big story, the one I can't really explain. I know D knew way more than he was letting on. I think Buck knew more than I did too, but he climbed up whenever I tried to talk to him. So, Max, what do you think? What was it? I think it was Native American to say the least, but I don't know what. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Let me start by saying I've never posted to this board before, but I look pretty often and have for quite some time. But I am bored. I have some stories, and a lot more from my friends and family. I will start with a quick one of my own. I'm about 5 years old when this happened, very late 90s. My granny's poodle named Missy dies. It was a mean little shit who bit me a few times. Uncle buried her in our backyard right after. Everyone moves on pretty quickly. Be about 2 weeks or so later, I am watching TV in the living room while my mother is out at the store. For some reason I have this odd urge to look down throughout the kitchen to the back door. I may have caught some movement from my peripheral vision. I see the dog walk in, looking pretty normal, as if she was alive through the back door. I am not sure how she got through the back door on her own, but I am a stupid kid, so I do not think much of it. I watch her look at me, move from left to the right where the food we kept in the back hallway from my new kitten was. She goes to the bowl and seems to be eating it or trying to, then looks up at me again to stare at me for a while before she walks into the bathroom. I quickly get up and run after her to the bathroom, but I do not see her anywhere. I tear the bathroom up looking anywhere I think she could be, like the bathtub, behind the toilet, in the closet. I eventually give up confused, but remember ghosts are a thing and just assume that was one. I go back to watching TV, and when my mother finally comes home, I run up to her and tell her I saw the dog, all excited and shit. To this day, I can still see her looking at me with shiny black eyes and walking into the bathroom in my mind. The thing is, she was blind with milky white eyes when she died, so that was weird that she could see me apparently. My mother still remembers that, at least me telling her. I have more stories. Ghost, quite a few Sasquatch, even a Wampus cat one. Alright, so this next one happened on Christmas Eve about 10 or so years ago, but this also happened to my brother at the same time it did me. We still talk about it sometimes. Be me, Christmas Eve. Downstairs relaxing while mom is cooking in the kitchen. It's the same house I've always lived in, the one with the ghost poodle sighting. I hear someone coming down the stairs. It could only be my brother or my GF who was asleep at the time. I stand up and T-pose like a moron thinking it's my brother because of where the footsteps came from. I can't see them due to the stairs' first landing being out of sight unless I go to the stairs and look up them. The sound stops at the first landing coming down and then nothing. I hear another set of heavier footsteps following my brother's room door open. It's loud. He comes down this time and is confused because he saw the back of me go down the stairs in all white. I am wearing something entirely different. I don't remember what. Now for my brother's perspective. Be my younger bro. He is coming out of his room to see if food is ready. He sees a white figure turn the corner to the steps and hear them walk down them. Go down after them, thinking it was older bro, wearing all white PJs or some shit, because he has those. Come to see real bro downstairs, just looking confused. Relate story, and I'm told the older bro hear the figure walking, but never saw it. This is the second time my brother has seen it. It's his first time turning the corner to the upstairs bathroom, but only ever the back of it. This actually reminds me of a friend I have, who thinks him and his friends had a skinwalker messing with them. Like the actual Dene/Navajo type of shape-shifting witch. He lives in Arizona. My friend is 17 when this happens. He is out with friends walking at dusk, because there is nothing much to do in the town that they live in. This is just to pass the time. He walks to the edge of town, where there is a park, up against miles of desert past it. He messes around for a bit, not sure what he was doing. Then they hear walking from the desert up to us at the playground. Can't see anything out there, but it sounded like a person walking to us from one direction. Hear a person scream out from the direction, which then turns into, I shit you not, this is what he told me, mooing, like from a cow. It is loud as shit. It starts circling us, and begins coming from all directions except from the direction of the town. It is rattling my head due to how loud this was. Me and my friends run back into town with the sound following for a short while. After about 200 feet away from the park, it just stops. Can feel like something watching us for some time. I run home with my friends in tow. I ask all around them. Everyone heard the sound and collectively shits their pants for about a week. When talking to him, he really did not like talking about that shit after it got dark and would typically tell us to shut up about it, but we would still do it to mess with him sometimes. For the next one I may need to put more detail, so I will skip the green text for right now. I have a friend who is an old guy, about 70-ish, who is like my unofficial uncle. His father was a very avid hunter back in the day. I remember going to his house and seeing all the deer trophies, a full stuffed black bear rearing up to about 6 feet, and even an albino groundhog he got when turkey hunting. His father was always out in the woods until he got too old for it. This next story takes place up on a mountain near here, Appalachians. There were about 3 guys and a dozen hunting hounds out there, trying to chase raccoons up trees so they could eye shine them with lights and pop them. They ate the meat apparently, and that night they got a scent, and were following it until they felt ready to release the hounds. As the dogs were set free, they heard them barking, and then snarling, and then a noise that sounded like a woman screaming, but multiplied a couple of times, layered over itself. They were confused, but then they heard the dogs crying out in pain and yelping, so they rushed into the brush, thinking maybe they had run up on a black bear with cubs. What they found was about 4 of the dogs ripped apart and thrown around the brush, and 2 very more badly injured. The rest fled back to them after the attack. Then they heard growling above them and shined up their spotlights and saw a huge black cat. It was flecked with blood and had fiery orange eyes in the light. He quickly went to shoot it with his 12-gauge double barrel, but the gun would not fire. It screamed again, which made them all flinch due to the intensity of it, and it leaped over them and sort of flew to another tree, like over their heads, straight across way further than any cat that size should be able to leap, after it jumped down and took off into the brush far away from them. Once that was over, he pointed his shotgun at the dirt and bang, it worked just fine first try. Appalachia, black cat, near paranormal ability. Literally everyone in WV knows about these. They are very real. I call them displacer beasts or wampus cats or swamp cats, and there is even other names for them. There is a few kinds of them also. I swear I've heard about them gliding with webbed skin under their legs, but I cannot find the story about that. Some teleport, some vanish. Man, the gliding, I can see the pic in my head, maybe a D&D creature, but I swear it was a creature story. I've heard them called wampus cats before, or just black cats by old timers. An old guy who runs a hunting/fishing store I go to when I'm looking for nice milsurps told me he has a friend who runs a goat farm, and he was losing them every night to something that took the entire goat. He staked out one night, and in the morning, he saw one stalking his goats. I was told he got a picture of it resting behind a large boulder, where you can see its head from the side, and the tail end at the other side of the rock, but I have never seen the picture. He also told me a couple of really interesting Sasquatch stories from around here. I guess I will tell the story my friend's father had in Florida, the same one who saw the wampus cat. I will tell it from his perspective. Being my friend's dad, it is in the 1950s that this happened. I am visiting Florida to see my brother for a while. I decided to go out early to get some fresh oranges from a local farm I knew of. I go before sunlight, because I always woke up early to go fishing and hunting, etc. I get the oranges. I am driving back in bro's pickup truck on one of those raised roads that they have down in there, forested swamp on both sides of us. It's foggy. It is now the crack of dawn. As the sun rises to the right of us, we see something large and hairy at the edge of our headlights walk out of the swamp and up onto the road. It is brownish black, maybe 6 to 7 feet tall, and walking on 2 legs as it crossed in front of us. My bro slams on the brakes. He is driving. He slams on them hard, and we skid and watch this thing cross for no more than a few seconds. We watch it go down back into the swamp, parting the grass as it went. I open up the glove box, take out the .357 that was in there, and a flashlight to go and look for this thing. We get to the spot that it went in. I can still hear it walking through thigh-high alligator/cottonmouth infested water. Brother is freaking out about seeing whatever it was and wants to leave, but I want to go in after it to see if I can get a better look. Bro says he will leave me if I go into the swamp after it. I give up. I go back to the truck and have a quiet drive home with bro. I didn't know what the hell it was until decades later when seeing The Legend of Boggy Creek. He told these stories with such clarity for a man his age. Sadly, he passed away a long time ago now, when I was still a young child, unfortunately. I wish I could have asked him more questions about this stuff now. Found out more. Maybe get some more details for you guys.